The bridal suite at the Grand Harbor Hotel in Charleston, South Carolina was filled with nervous energy. Olivia Lancaster sat in front of the mirror in her wedding dress, a stunning ivory gown with delicate lace sleeves and a cathedral train. In 3 hours, she would walk down the aisle to marry Marcus Whitfield, the man she'd loved for 4 years. Her twin sister, Emma, stood behind her, adjusting the veil. They were identical in every physical way. Same dark auburn hair, same green eyes, same slender build, but their personalities couldn't have been more different. Olivia was confident, successful, beloved. Emma was the other twin, the one who'd spent 28 years in her sister's shadow. "You look perfect," Emma said, her voice tight with something Olivia couldn't quite identify. "Thanks for being here, Em. I know things have been weird between us lately." Weird was an understatement. For the past year, Emma had watched her twin sister plan the wedding of the century, watched Marcus look at Olivia with adoration Emma had never experienced, watched her parents beam with pride at their successful daughter while barely acknowledging Emma's existence. Emma had loved Marcus first. They'd met at a charity gala 3 months before Olivia attended. Emma and Marcus had talked for hours, exchanged numbers, planned to meet for coffee. But then Olivia showed up to the second gala, the one Emma had invited her to, and Marcus's attention shifted completely. Within weeks, he was dating Olivia. Within months, they were engaged. And Emma had been expected to smile and pretend her heart wasn't breaking. "I need some air," Olivia said suddenly, standing up. "This corset is so tight I can barely breathe. Can you help me loosen it?" Emma's hands shook as she worked the laces on the back of the dress. This close, she could see every detail: the intricate beadwork, the perfect fit, the way the dress made Olivia look like a princess. Everything Emma would never have. "God, that's better," Olivia said, when Emma had loosened the corset slightly. "I'm going to step out onto the balcony for just a minute. Get some fresh air before the ceremony." She walked out onto the private balcony attached to the bridal suite, leaving Emma alone with the dress, the veil, the bouquet, all the trappings of the life Emma desperately wanted. And that's when the thought entered her mind. Terrible, impulsive, destructive. They were identical. No one could tell them apart unless they were very close. The wedding had 300 guests, most of whom had only met Olivia once or twice. Marcus had only known Olivia for 4 years, and he'd admitted once that he sometimes had trouble telling the twins apart from behind. What if Emma took her place? Just for the ceremony. Just to feel what it was like to have everyone's attention. To have Marcus look at her with love. To be the bride instead of the forgotten twin for one single moment. She wouldn't go through with it. She'd reveal herself before the kiss. Before signing the marriage license. It would just be a momentary swap. A brief taste of the life she'd never have. Emma looked out at the balcony where Olivia stood, her back to the room, breathing deeply. The wedding was in 2 hours. There was time. Before she could second-guess herself, Emma acted. She mixed 2 sleeping pills, prescribed for her chronic insomnia, into a glass of champagne, and walked out to the balcony. "Here," Emma said, handing Olivia the glass. "Dutch courage. You look nervous." "I am nervous," Olivia admitted, taking the glass gratefully. "This is the biggest day of my life. What if I trip walking down the aisle? What if I mess up my vows?" "You'll be perfect," Emma said, and meant it. "You're always perfect." Olivia drank the champagne, chatting about last-minute details. Within 20 minutes, she was yawning. "I'm so tired suddenly. I think the stress is catching up with me." "Lie down for a bit," Emma suggested, her heart pounding. "I'll wake you with plenty of time to get ready." Olivia stretched out on the couch in the bridal suite. Within minutes, she was deeply asleep. Emma stared at her unconscious sister, panic and exhilaration warring in her chest. She'd done it. Olivia would be out for at least 3 hours, long past the ceremony time, which meant, if Emma wanted to take her place, this was her chance. It was just a game. Just pretend. She'd stop it before anything legal or binding happened. Emma stripped out of her maid of honor dress, a pale pink gown that made her look washed out, and carefully put on Olivia's wedding dress. The fit was perfect. They wore the same size and everything. She did her makeup exactly like Olivia's, slightly heavier than her usual style, with the signature red lip Olivia favored. She put on the veil. When she looked in the mirror, she saw Olivia staring back. No one would know. No one would be able to tell. The wedding coordinator knocked on the door. 15 minutes, Miss Lancaster. Your father is waiting to escort you downstairs." Emma took a deep breath, just for the ceremony, just to see what it felt like. Then she'd reveal the truth before anything legal happened. She opened the door. Their father, Richard Lancaster, beamed at her. "Oh, Olivia, you're stunning. Marcus is the luckiest man alive." "Thanks, Dad," Emma said, using Olivia's slightly lower, more confident tone. He didn't notice. He never noticed Emma anyway. They walked down the grand staircase to the hotel's ballroom, which had been transformed into a romantic garden with hundreds of roses and twinkling lights. Emma's stomach churned. She could still stop this. She could tell her father right now that she wasn't Olivia, that Olivia was asleep upstairs. But then the music started. The doors opened, and 300 people turned to look at her. For the first time in her life, Emma was the center of attention. Not the forgotten twin, not the shadow, but the bride. Everyone was looking at her, at Emma, with joy and anticipation. She walked down the aisle on her father's arm, her eyes fixed on Marcus at the altar. He looked devastatingly handsome in his black tuxedo, his eyes shining with emotion as he watched her approach. This was wrong. This was so wrong. But God, it felt incredible. Marcus took her hand when she reached the altar. "You're shaking," he whispered. "Are you okay?" "Just nervous," Emma whispered back, using Olivia's inflection. The officiant began the ceremony. Emma told herself she'd stop it any second now, before the vows, before the rings, before anything that mattered. But then Marcus began speaking his vows, beautiful, personal, romantic words about loving Olivia from the moment he met her, about building a life together, about being grateful every day for her presence in his life. And Emma realized these words weren't for her. They were for Olivia. Marcus didn't love Emma. He'd never loved Emma. He probably didn't even remember meeting her at that first gala. This was all wrong. "I do," Marcus said, his voice thick with emotion. The officiant turned to Emma. "And do you, Olivia Marie Lancaster, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" This was her last chance to stop it, to reveal the truth, to save Marcus from unknowingly marrying the wrong woman. But 300 people were watching. Her parents were beaming. Marcus was looking at her with such love. Love meant for Olivia, but love nonetheless. And Emma, who'd spent 28 years being invisible, couldn't bear to step back into the shadows. "I do," Emma heard herself say. "You may now kiss the bride." Marcus leaned in, his hands cupping Emma's face, and kissed her deeply. And in that moment, Emma knew with absolute certainty that she'd made a catastrophic mistake, because Marcus pulled back with a confused expression. His eyes searched her face. "Olivia," he said quietly, so only she could hear. "Something's different. Your kiss feels different." Emma's blood ran cold. He knew. Somehow he knew she wasn't Olivia. But before Marcus could say anything else, the crowd erupted in applause. The ceremony was over. Emma, pretending to be Olivia, was legally married to Marcus Whitfield, and somewhere upstairs, the real Olivia was still sleeping, completely unaware that her twin sister had stolen her wedding, her husband, and her entire life. Olivia woke to pounding on the bridal suite door. Her head felt thick, her mouth dry. She was lying on the couch, still in her wedding dress. Or was she? She looked down confused. She was wearing her silk robe, not the dress. "Olivia, open this door right now!" Her mother's voice, shrill with panic. Olivia stumbled to the door, opening it to find her mother, Catherine, her father, Richard, and her best friend, Sarah, all staring at her with expressions of shock and fury. "What's going on?" Olivia asked, still groggy. "What time is it?" "It's 6:30 p.m., Catherine said, her voice icy. "Your wedding was 3 hours ago. Where were you?" "What? No, the wedding is at 4 p.m. I was just resting for a few minutes before." Olivia's voice trailed off as reality crashed down. She looked at the clock. 6:30 p.m. She'd been asleep for over 4 hours. "Oh my God. Where's Emma? She was supposed to wake me up." "Emma," Catherine said, her voice dripping with venom, "walked down the aisle 3 hours ago wearing your dress. She married Marcus. Emma is now Mrs. Whitfield." Olivia's legs gave out. She sank onto the couch, her mind refusing to process what she was hearing. "That's not possible. Emma wouldn't. She couldn't." "She did," Richard said grimly. "Your sister drugged you, stole your wedding dress, and married your fiancé. And we didn't realize until Marcus pulled her aside after the ceremony and confronted her. Where is she now?" "Downstairs with Marcus and a lawyer, trying to figure out if the marriage is even legal." Olivia ran downstairs still in her robe, not caring who saw her. She burst into a private conference room where Emma sat at a table still wearing the wedding dress, her makeup smeared from crying. Marcus stood across the room, his face a mask of shock and betrayal. A lawyer sat between them taking notes. "Olivia," Emma whispered when she saw her sister. "I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry." "You drugged me," Olivia said, her voice shaking. "You stole my wedding. You married my fiancé. How could you?" "I didn't mean for it to go this far. I was just going to walk down the aisle, just to see what it felt like. I was going to stop before the vows, I swear. But you didn't stop," Marcus cut in, his voice cold. "You said, 'I do.' You signed the marriage certificate. You kissed me. You let 300 people believe you were Olivia. I panicked. Everyone was watching, and I couldn't stop it. But Marcus, I tried to tell you. During the kiss, You tried nothing," Marcus said. "You deceived me. You let me marry you thinking you were your sister. Do you understand what you've done? We're legally married now, Emma. You and me. Not Olivia and me. You." Emma sobbed harder. "The lawyer said it might not be legal. That if you thought you were marrying someone else, it's fraud. We can get it annulled." "Oh, we're getting it annulled," Marcus said. "But Emma, you've committed a crime. Identity fraud. Forgery. The lawyer says you could face criminal charges." Olivia sank into a chair, trying to process the nightmare unfolding. "Why?" she asked Emma. "Why would you do this to me?" Emma looked at her twin sister with years of resentment finally spilling out. "Because you have everything, Olivia. You're the successful one, the beautiful one, the one everyone loves. I've spent 28 years being your shadow. Do you know what it's like to be the forgotten twin? The one people only notice because she looks like you? So you destroyed my wedding, married my fiancé?" "I met Marcus first," Emma shouted. "At the gala in February last year. We talked for hours. He asked for my number. We were going to have coffee. And then you showed up to the next event, and suddenly I didn't exist. He looked right through me like I was invisible. Within a week he was dating you. I loved him first, Olivia." Marcus stared at Emma in shock. "I don't even remember meeting you. Was I supposed to? One conversation at a gala?" "Exactly," Emma said bitterly. "One conversation with me, and you forgot I existed. But one conversation with Olivia, and you fell in love. That's my life, being forgotten while my identical twin sister gets everything I want." "That doesn't justify this," Olivia said, tears streaming down her face. "Emma, you didn't just ruin my wedding. You destroyed our relationship. You're my sister, my twin, and you betrayed me in the worst possible way." "I know," Emma whispered. "I know what I did, and I'll regret it for the rest of my life. But Olivia, just for one moment, during that ceremony, when everyone was looking at me, when Marcus was holding my hand, I felt like I mattered, like I wasn't just your shadow." The lawyer cleared her throat. "Mr. Whitfield, Miss Lancaster, both of you, we need to discuss next steps. The marriage can likely be annulled based on fraud and mistaken identity. However, Miss Emma Lancaster could face criminal charges for identity fraud, forgery of legal documents, and possibly assault for drugging Miss Olivia. I want the annulment," Marcus said immediately, "as soon as possible." "What about pressing charges?" the lawyer asked, looking at Olivia. Olivia looked at her sister, her identical twin, her lifelong companion, the person she'd shared a womb with. Emma had committed an unforgivable betrayal. She deserved to face consequences. But she was also Olivia's sister, and some part of Olivia understood the pain that had driven Emma to such a desperate act. "I need time," Olivia said finally. "I need to think about what comes next. But right now, I can't even look at you, Emma. Get out of my wedding dress, get out of this hotel, and stay away from me." 3 months after the annulment, Emma sat in the sterile conference room of the Charleston County District Attorney's office, her hands trembling as she faced the possibility of years in prison. Her lawyer, Daniel Morrison, sat beside her reviewing the potential charges one more time. The federal prosecutor, Assistant District Attorney Linda Chen, laid out the case with clinical precision. "Miss Lancaster, let me be clear about what you're facing. First, identity fraud under federal statute. You assumed your sister's identity to deceive an officer of the court during a legal ceremony. That's a felony carrying up to 5 years. Second, forgery of legal documents. You signed the marriage license as Olivia Lancaster, which constitutes forgery. That's another 3 to 5 years. Third, felony assault. You administered sleeping medication to your sister without her knowledge or consent, causing her to be incapacitated for over 4 hours. That's 2 to 4 years. Emma felt the room spin. I could go to prison for 14 years? Potentially, if the sentences run consecutively rather than concurrently. And Miss Lancaster, the court takes these crimes seriously. You didn't just commit fraud. You violated the sanctity of a legal institution, endangered your sister's health, and traumatized multiple innocent parties. But I didn't mean to. Intent matters for some charges, not for others. You intentionally drugged your sister. You intentionally wore her dress and assumed her identity. You intentionally signed legal documents under her name. The fact that you claim you planned to stop before the vows doesn't change what actually happened. Daniel Morrison spoke up. My client is willing to plead guilty to reduced charges in exchange for probation, community service, and mandatory therapy. She has no prior criminal record. This was an isolated incident driven by untreated mental health issues. An isolated incident that resulted in felony-level harm, Linda Chen interrupted. Mr. Morrison, your client committed premeditated crimes. She obtained sleeping medication weeks ago. She planned this deception. This wasn't a spontaneous mistake. Emma broke down crying. I'll do anything. Please. I'll go to therapy. I'll do community service. I'll pay restitution. Just please don't send me to prison. I made a terrible mistake, but I'm not a criminal. You became a criminal the moment you drugged your sister, Chen said flatly. However, the decision whether to pursue maximum charges rests with the victim. If Olivia Lancaster chooses not to press charges, my office will recommend a plea deal. Guilty plea to misdemeanor fraud and assault, 2 years probation, 200 hours community service, mandatory therapy, and a 5-year restraining order keeping you away from your sister. And if she does press charges, Emma whispered, then we prosecute to the fullest extent of the law. And Miss Lancaster, based on the evidence, we will win. Meanwhile, Olivia was navigating her own impossible decision. She sat with Marcus in their apartment, the apartment they were supposed to have returned to as newlyweds, instead of as a traumatized couple trying to salvage their relationship. The DA called, Olivia said. They want to know if I'm pressing criminal charges against Emma. They're waiting on my decision to move forward. Marcus looked exhausted. He'd barely slept in weeks, tortured by the realization that he'd unknowingly married the wrong woman. What do you want to do? I don't know. She's my sister, Marcus, my twin. We shared a womb. We've been together since before we were born. How do I send her to prison? She drugged you, Olivia. She stole your wedding. She deceived me into marrying her. Those are serious crimes. I know they are. But Marcus, Emma's not a career criminal. She's a deeply troubled woman who made a catastrophic choice driven by years of jealousy and mental health issues. If I press charges, she could get 14 years in prison. That's more than some violent offenders get. And if you don't press charges, what message does that send? That it's okay to drug someone? To commit identity fraud? To destroy someone's wedding? Olivia was silent for a long moment. I spoke with a victim's advocate today. She specializes in family crimes, situations where the perpetrator is related to the victim. She said something that stuck with me. Justice isn't always about punishment. Sometimes it's about accountability, rehabilitation, and ensuring the behavior never happens again. So you're not going to press charges, Marcus said, and Olivia couldn't tell if he was relieved or disappointed. I'm going to require a plea deal. Emma pleads guilty to the crimes, accepts probation and community service, undergoes intensive therapy for her jealousy and identity issues, and agrees to a restraining order keeping her away from me for at least 5 years. She also has to move out of Charleston, preferably out of state. I can't heal if she's constantly around. That's more merciful than she deserves, Marcus observed. Maybe. But Marcus, if I send Emma to prison, I'll spend the rest of my life wondering if I could have handled it differently. This way, she faces consequences, but not ones that destroy her entire future. And maybe, she gets the help she needs to become a better person. The plea deal was finalized 1 month later. Emma stood in court, her face tear-stained, as she pled guilty to misdemeanor fraud and assault. The judge sentenced her to 2 years probation, 200 hours of community service working with domestic violence survivors, weekly therapy sessions for a minimum of 2 years, and a 5-year restraining order preventing contact with Olivia or Marcus. Miss Lancaster, Judge Rebecca Hamilton said sternly, you've been given an enormous gift by your sister. She chose mercy when she could have chosen justice. Do not waste this opportunity. Use these next years to become the person you should have been all along. If you violate any term of this probation, you will serve the full 14 years you were originally facing. Do you understand? "Yes, Your Honor," Emma whispered. "Thank you." As Emma left the courthouse, she looked back at Olivia one last time. Her twin sister sat in the gallery with Marcus, their expressions unreadable. Emma wanted to say something, to apologize one more time, to express her gratitude for the mercy she'd been shown. But the restraining order was now active. Any contact would violate the terms and send her immediately to prison. So Emma simply nodded, a gesture of acknowledgement, remorse, and goodbye, and walked out of the courthouse into an uncertain future. 6 months after the wedding disaster, Marcus sat in his therapist's office for his twice-weekly session. Dr. Patricia Reynolds had been helping him process the trauma of what Emma had done, and more importantly, helping him understand why it still affected him so deeply. "I feel violated," Marcus said, not for the first time. "Emma kissed me. She let me believe she was the woman I loved. She deceived me into the most intimate act of that ceremony. The kiss, the exchange of vows, the promise of forever. And it was all based on a lie." "You're describing sexual deception," Dr. Reynolds said gently. "When someone consents to intimate contact with one person and unknowingly engages in that contact with someone else, it's a violation of consent. Even though the kiss was brief and relatively chaste, you experienced it as a breach of your bodily autonomy." "But she looked exactly like Olivia. How was I supposed to know?" "You weren't supposed to know. That's what makes it deception. Marcus, you're not at fault here. You were tricked by someone who knew exactly what she was doing." But Marcus couldn't shake the guilt. He'd met Emma first, at that charity gala over 4 years ago. They'd talked for hours about art, philosophy, their favorite books. He'd found her intelligent and charming. He'd asked for her number, intending to follow up, and then he'd forgotten. Completely forgotten. Until he met Olivia at the next gala, and was instantly captivated by her confidence, her warmth, her magnetic presence. "Should I have remembered Emma?" Marcus asked his therapist. "If I'd remembered meeting her first, would any of this have happened?" "You can't know that. But Marcus, even if you'd remembered, that doesn't make you responsible for Emma's choices. She decided to drug her sister. She decided to steal the wedding. She decided to deceive you. Those were her choices, not yours. But the guilt persisted. And worse, it was affecting his relationship with Olivia. Every time they tried to be intimate, Marcus saw Emma's face. Every kiss reminded him of that moment at the altar when something felt wrong, but he couldn't identify what. Every time he looked at Olivia, he wondered if he'd somehow notice if someone tried to impersonate her again. "I can't touch you without thinking about her," Marcus finally admitted to Olivia 2 months later. "I know that's not fair to you. I know you're a victim too. But Olivia, Emma's face, your face, it's burned into my memory from that moment. And I can't separate you from her anymore." Olivia felt her heart break. "So what are you saying? That you can't be with me because my identical twin sister deceived you?" "I'm saying I need more time, more therapy, more space to process this trauma before I can be the partner you deserve." They decided to separate temporarily. Marcus moved into an extended stay hotel. They continued couples therapy 3 times a week, but they stopped trying to force physical intimacy that felt tainted by Emma's actions. "Do you still love me?" Olivia asked during one particularly painful session. "Yes," Marcus said immediately, "but I also feel betrayed, violated, and confused. And I don't know how to reconcile loving you with the trauma of what your sister did using your face, your name, your identity." "So Emma wins," Olivia said bitterly. "She destroys our wedding, and now she destroys our relationship. She gets exactly what she wanted, to take you away from me. That's not what I want. But Olivia, we can't build a marriage on a foundation of trauma. We need time to heal, both of us." The separation lasted 4 months. During that time, Marcus worked intensively on processing the violation he'd experienced. He joined a support group for victims of identity fraud and deception. He wrote letters to Emma that he never sent, expressing his anger and confusion. He worked on separating Olivia from Emma in his mind, seeing them as distinct individuals rather than interchangeable twins. And slowly, painfully, he began to heal. 2 years after the wedding switch, Olivia and Marcus had their real wedding. It was nothing like the elaborate ceremony Emma had stolen. This time, it was held in Marcus's parents' backyard in Savannah, with only immediate family present, Marcus's parents, Olivia's parents, and 4 close friends serving as witnesses. Olivia wore a simple blue dress instead of a wedding gown. They exchanged vows they'd written themselves, focused on truth, honesty, and rebuilding trust. And when Marcus kissed Olivia, his real bride this time, both of them cried with relief that they'd made it through the trauma together. "I love you," Marcus whispered against Olivia's lips. "You, not your sister, not some confused version, just you. I love you too," Olivia replied. "Thank you for not giving up on us." The first year of their marriage was difficult. They were building a relationship on the ashes of the one Emma had destroyed. Every milestone, their first anniversary, their first shared apartment, their first Christmas as a married couple, was shadowed by the memory of what should have been, but they persevered. They went to therapy. They talked honestly about their feelings, even when those conversations were painful. They rebuilt trust slowly, brick by brick. 3 years after the switch, Olivia gave birth to their daughter, Sophie. Holding her newborn, Olivia felt a complicated mix of emotions: joy at being a mother, grief for the relationship with her twin sister that had been destroyed, and curiosity about whether Emma, somewhere across the country, knew she'd become an aunt. By the terms of the restraining order, Olivia couldn't contact Emma even if she wanted to, but she thought about her sister often, wondered if she was getting help, if she'd found peace, if she regretted her actions. 5 years after the wedding disaster, the restraining order expired. Olivia received a letter, forwarded through her lawyer to comply with the legal restrictions. "Olivia, I know I have no right to contact you. I know the restraining order just ended, and you might not want to hear from me, but I need you to know what the past 5 years have been like. I moved to Seattle. I got intensive therapy, not court-ordered anymore, but because I needed it. I was diagnosed with complex PTSD, borderline personality disorder, and persistent depressive disorder. I'd been struggling with mental health issues my entire life and never got proper treatment. I learned that my jealousy of you wasn't really about you. It was about how I felt about myself: worthless, invisible, less than. I used you as a measuring stick for my own inadequacy instead of building my own identity. I've worked for a nonprofit for the past 4 years, helping women who've experienced domestic violence and trauma. Ironically, doing the community service the court ordered showed me my calling. I've helped dozens of women rebuild their lives after devastating betrayals. I don't deserve forgiveness. What I did to you was unforgivable. But I want you to know that I'm not that person anymore. I've spent 5 years becoming someone I can live with, someone who doesn't need to steal other people's lives to feel worthy. If you never want to speak to me again, I understand. But if you ever want to talk, I'm here. I miss my sister, but I understand if that door is permanently closed." Olivia read the letter a dozen times. Then she showed it to Marcus. "What do you want to do?" he asked. "I don't know. Part of me wants to throw this away and never think about her again. Part of me wonders if people really can change. Do you want to know if she's changed? Maybe, but not yet. Sophie is 6 months old. I'm rebuilding my career. We're finally stable. I'm not ready to reopen that wound." 5 more years passed. Sophie grew into a bright, curious 6-year-old. Olivia and Marcus had a son, James, now 2 years old. Their family was complete, their marriage strong, their lives full. And then Sophie asked a question that changed everything. "Mommy, Grandma showed me a picture of you and another lady who looks just like you. She said it's your twin sister. Why don't we ever see her?" Olivia took a breath, considering how much to tell a 6-year-old. "Aunt Emma did something that hurt me very badly a long time ago. We needed space from each other so both of us could heal. But she's still your sister, right? Sisters always make up. It's more complicated than that, sweetheart. But you love her, right? Even when people hurt us, we still love them. That's what you taught me when James broke my dollhouse." Out of the mouths of babes, Olivia thought. That night, she pulled out Emma's letter from 5 years earlier, the one she'd kept but never answered. And after a decade of silence, Olivia finally called her twin sister. "Hello?" Emma's voice, tentative and hopeful. "Emma, it's Olivia." A sharp intake of breath. "Oh my God. I never thought. I hoped, but I never thought. I'm not calling to say I forgive you. I'm not calling to rebuild what we had. I'm calling because my daughter asked why she's never met her aunt, and I realized that even though you destroyed us, you're still family. And maybe, it's time to figure out what that means now." They talked for 2 hours, not about the wedding, not about the betrayal, but about the past 10 years, Emma's therapy and growth, Olivia's children and career, the lives they'd built in separate corners of the country. "Can I meet them?" Emma asked carefully. "Sophie and James?" "Not yet. This is going to be slow, Emma. Years slow. We'll start with phone calls." maybe video chats in a few months, maybe, an in-person visit in a year or two. But Emma, if you ever lie to me again, if you ever violate my trust, we're done. Forever. Do you understand? I understand. Thank you, Olivia, for giving me this chance. I know I don't deserve it. No, you don't. But I'm choosing to believe people can change. Don't prove me wrong. Over the next 3 years, they rebuilt slowly. Monthly phone calls became weekly. Video chats where Sophie and James met their Aunt Emma. Carefully supervised visits where Emma came to Charleston for a weekend, staying in a hotel, spending structured time with the family under Olivia and Marcus's watchful eyes. Emma met Sophie and James and cried when they hugged her. They're beautiful, Olivia. You're an amazing mother. Thank you, Olivia said, still cautious but warming. 13 years after the wedding switch, Emma got married. She invited Olivia, Marcus, and the children. Olivia debated for weeks before deciding to attend. At the wedding, Olivia watched Emma marry a man named David Chen, a therapist who'd met Emma during her recovery journey, who knew her entire story and loved her anyway. The ceremony was simple, honest, and filled with emotion. Do you, Emma Lancaster, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband? I do, Emma said, her voice clear and certain. When Emma kissed her husband, Olivia felt something loosen in her chest. Emma had found her own happiness, built her own life, become her own person, not Olivia's shadow. After the ceremony, the twins stood together on the venue's terrace, overlooking Elliott Bay in Seattle. Thank you for coming, Emma said. I know it took courage. You built something real, Olivia observed. Your own life, your own love, your own identity. It took destroying yours for me to figure out who I was, Emma said sadly. I can't change that, but I can show you through my actions that I'm not that person anymore. You have, Olivia admitted, slowly, over 13 years. Emma, I don't think we'll ever have what we had before. That innocent twin bond is gone forever, but maybe we can build something new. Something based on truth and accountability rather than assumptions and resentment. I'd like that, Emma said, tears streaming down her face. They hugged, carefully, awkwardly, but genuinely. Two women who'd been inseparable until one destroyed everything, learning to be sisters again in a completely different way. We're not going to be close, Olivia said. Not like before. But Emma, you're Sophie and James's aunt. You're my twin, and I'm choosing to believe that redemption is possible. Thank you, Emma whispered. I don't deserve your grace, but I'm grateful for it every day. As they stood together looking out at the water, Olivia reflected on the past 13 years. The devastation, the trauma, the slow, painful rebuilding. Emma had committed an unforgivable act, but she'd also spent over a decade proving she was more than her worst moment. Happy wedding day, Olivia said quietly. I mean it. Thank you, Emma replied. And Olivia, I'm sorry for everything. Every single day, I'm sorry. I know you are. And someday, maybe, I'll be able to say I forgive you, but not yet. For now, this is enough. And standing together in the golden Seattle sunset, two sisters who'd been identical until betrayal tore them apart, found their way to something new. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, but the tentative beginning of understanding.